Hi and welcome to another video. Today we are talking about relational versus NoSQL in terms of databases. If you haven't watched my previous video about databases, please do so before you continue with this video. I'm gonna link it in the corner. What we're starting with are relational databases. Relational databases, I guess most of you have heard of them, are the most popular and most common databases that are today in use. Relational databases consist of tables and relations. That's where the name relational database comes from. So, as an example, I have two tables down here. I have the table student and I have the table class. And in those tables, you can see rows, you can see columns, and you can see the rows. So in the columns, you have different attributes, namely ID, name, age, class for the student, and for the class I have ID, name, professor, location. So now these tables, they consist of instances of this, or of instances of data instances, where you have data inserted into this table. So if I go to student with ID 1, I have Philip, which is aged 25 and is in class 1. So now the relation between those two tables is this last column in the student table, which is called class. So in this class column, I have the IDs of the class table. So if I go to the class table, I have the column ID, and those IDs are in this table the primary key. So the primary key is a key or an attribute which can be used to identify each instance of this database. So I have only one instance with the ID 1, only one with the ID 2, only one with the ID 3. For the table student, I have the IDs as well, but here in this case, they are not used as a foreign key. Only the class ID is used as a foreign key. A foreign key is in another table, so if I want to link the class table to the student table, I can put the class ID or the primary key of the class into the student table as a foreign key. And this foreign key is referencing this other table. So if I go to the student with the ID 1, I can see his name, his age, and which class he's in. Because if I just take the ID and go to the class table, I can see he's in programming with Mr. Smith and in Berlin. So that's how the relation in relational database works. There are different types of relations. There are one-to-one relations, which is just there's one student in one class. There are one-to-n relations. There is one student in multiple classes. Or there are n-to-m relations, which is there are multiple students in multiple classes. In this case, I have one class can be visited by multiple students, which you can see here, but one student can only visit one class. So I have in programming 2 students and in marketing 1 student. Right, now we move on to NoSQL databases. And NoSQL stands for not only SQL. So it's not no SQL, we don't want any SQL, but we want not only SQL. Why is SQL? Because SQL is the primary language used for relational databases. SQL stands for Structured Query Language, which is used to build and query relational databases. And the not only SQL movement is basically to show alternatives for relational databases, but they don't really have a real definition. So NoSQL databases are basically all the databases that are not relational databases. So there is no definition because there are so many different database types that can be listed underneath NoSQL, and so you can't really define them. But what most of them have in common is that it's availability over consistency. So in relational databases you have consistency first. So you want everything in a database be consistent. You have everywhere the same data. If the database is distributed, you want to have everywhere the same data. And it doesn't matter if the database is not that available, because for example in banking transactions you want to have consistency first, and availability is not that primary in this case. But NoSQL databases came up in the web age. So with the rising of the web and internet, it became more important to have availability first. For example, if we have the YouTube database, it's okay to not be consistent. If I upload a video and the video is not instantly everywhere available, it's okay. It doesn't matter really much. But if the YouTube database is down and it's not available, it's a huge problem for everyone, because we want to watch videos, sponsors want to promote videos, and creators want to make money with videos. So first availability, and later we can have consistency. In this context, it's often called basically available, because they are every time available, and eventually consistent, because at some point databases have to be consistent, but it doesn't matter if this is happening immediately, it can happen to a later time. In this context, you also sometimes hear the words base and ACID. ACID is basically an abbreviation for all the parts of consistency with relational databases, and base is abbreviation for the availability and eventually consistent stuff for NoSQL databases. So now I want to show you some types of NoSQL databases. I want to show you KeyValue databases, document store or document databases, and graph databases. Those are the most popular of the NoSQL databases. Of course, I know there are a lot more different database types in the NoSQL movement, but I can't show you every database type because there are just too many. The first database type are KeyValue databases. KeyValue databases look kind of like a dictionary in Python, or a hash table, or a associated array, depending on which language you want to use. So basically, KeyValue databases consist of keys, which you have here, and values, which can contain any kind of value. It can have a dictionary or key value or associated array. It can have a string, it can have an integer, doesn't really matter. But what's important for key value databases, the keys are unique, and they offer access to the value. So if you have the key, you can easily access the value that's standing behind the key. This offers a good performance because with the keys you can just access the value. And also the key value pairs, they are not connected internally, so this key is not connected to the next key. It can be, but it's not necessary, and that's what makes key value databases extremely scalable, because they aren't that much interconnected. The next NoSQL database type are document stores. Document stores consist of documents or collections, which we have here. So here we have a collection consisting of multiple documents, and this again consists of multiple collections or multiple fields. They can have both actually. So they look kind of like key value databases, which is because document stores are a derivative of key value databases. The key difference though is that document stores are designed to offer a richer programming experience with modern programming languages. So if you are in a modern surrounding, you often use document stores instead of key value databases. The last type of NoSQL database we have a look at are graph databases. Graph databases have a structure like you can see here. It has this network-like structure. That's why it's also commonly used in social networks, Facebook for example. There we have a good indication that if we have user 1, he knows user 2 and user 3, and you can see those connections between users. And graph databases are specifically made for this kind of connection or geo databases. So in a relational database you could potentially also mimic this, but not as efficient as in a graph database. And for example, if you have a huge database like a Facebook database, those databases are so massive and they need to be scaled a lot of the time. So relational databases aren't just cutting it. So we needed graph databases, and they are perfect for this. Also, if you have machine learning and AI, there are used graph databases. They use graph databases to work with their data and make the connections between those data. Oops, sorry. So, like that. Yeah, that's basically the 3 NoSQL databases I wanted to show you. A little bit about relational databases and NoSQL databases. I hope you enjoy, and I hope you could learn a little bit about the different database types. So if you want to know more about them, or if you want me to make another video about them so you can learn more about it, please write me in the comments that I should do so. And if so, I'm gonna make another video about databases. And yeah, in that case, I wanna tell you that you should look into NoSQL databases, not only relational databases. And yeah, so now have a good day and see you in the next video. Bye.